George Barnsley.
Simon.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
George, I've got all this paraphernalia.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that, I was getting excited for a minute or two. It's been a while.
These things
the old
as well,
cuffs,
the old
aye.
cuffs, yeah.
As long as you've got the key for them.
Yes,
That's all right. Always check that these days.
especially olden days with kids.
Yeah, totally. Where to start? We're here because of your first book coming out.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. The Lanarkshire Police Chronicles.
Yep.
Now, I know the answer to this question because I was in the story, but tell us a wee bit about how that came about for any aspiring authors, George.
Well, it came from, initially started with me just collecting memorabilia and police items and things, and doing a bit of research just into the background of policing, the history of policing, mainly focusing on Lanarkshire, so that was the kind of main thrust.
Okay.
And in 2013 we established the Lanarkshire Police Historical Society. And that was when Police Scotland came into being in April the 1st, funnily enough.
Is that why it came into being?
That's why it came into being.
Because you can see things moving on. And
well, we were invited along to an open day at Motherwell Police Office because the Strathclyde division at that time was moving into Police Scotland to become the new Lanarkshire division. And what they wanted to do was mark the occasion by showing some of the memorabilia and equipment used in years gone by through to the current time. So, although the Historical Society wasn't established then, the Retired Police Officers Association is and was. So, they knew I had a lot of memorabilia, asked me to come along. So, I went up into the loft, brought everything out, went to Motherwell Police Office and displayed in the old canteen uniforms, books, badges, you name it. Now, approximately 3,000 people came through the door that day.
wow.
And a lot of interest from members of the public, retired officers and serving officers was in the memorabilia and all the police items.
Right.
So the other guys that were there with me, there was 2 or 3 of us, got heads together and thought, is there something in this?
Yeah.
And we created the Lanarkshire Police Historical Society, which is now, that's 9 years we've been running.
Right. You say we?
Yep. Henry Harper, who's a retired detective superintendent. Joe McIver, British Empire Medal winner.
Yes.
Joe's involved. Jim Manson, a retired cop. My wife, Catherine, she's involved as well. So that's the committee that's all involved.
That's a wise move, that last
Yes,
one.
very much so.
Yeah.
She was more than chuffed when all the stuff came out the loft as well.
Can I ask how you got in the loft in the first place? Is that off the record?
No, I didn't know where to put it, that was it.
Right.
A lot of the stuff I've bought at auctions or it's been gifted to me, or you've picked up along the way as you go along in the police, which I'll maybe explain later as to why we have some of these items.
Right. Have you got a background in history, George?
No. I liked history. I've always been interested in the war and various aspects of history, but I've no formal
So this was your first feeling?
Yeah.
And it was by default because you had all this stuff lying and getting nagged about?
Yeah. No, I wasn't getting nagged about it, very honest.
So, what was your background in, George? Police, obviously police officer. Where were you from?
Originally from Airdrie.
You're a Lanarkshire boy?
I'm from Airdrie, Lanarkshire. That's where I was born and brought up. And basically been there most of my life, apart from a couple of...
What school did you go
to? Started off at Clarkson Primary School and then Caldervale High School.
That's a common question in here because this is usually football. This is the home of Pollok United. And it's usually footballers and ex-pros and whatnot. And one of the first questions is always, what school did you go to? For obvious reasons.
It's an easier way of asking something.
Yeah. So, Airdrie boy, when did you join the police? Did you work before?
No. After I left school, I'd applied for the police cadets before I'd left school.
Right.
And I was aware that I was getting into the cadets, so I more or less left school after the exams in May of 1978, and then in June 1978 went into the cadets.
Okay. And where were you based with the cadets? All
over. I mean, the cadet system at that time worked on secondments.
Yes.
So it was either at headquarters at Pitt Street, Oxford Street, Mounted Branch, Dog Branch at Pollok Park, just nearby.
Yes.
And also you went out to divisions. For example, one of my first ones was with the CID out to Airdrie, which was probably one of the best ones I've ever done.
Right.
Because the people out there were just absolutely fantastic, and you were hands-on with all the various things that were happening. Then, as I was asking you earlier on, Cardonald College, we went there for a 3-month cadet course. We had to pass a public administration examination before you would actually get into the police, which I managed to do. And then you spent the last 6 months actually attached to a shift, doing the full shift system.
Right.
And that was at Cumbernauld, where I'd done that.
No. And then you get a date that you're starting. You'd move seamlessly from cadet?
Yes, straight in. It was more or less at the end of your 18 and a half you had to be before you actually moved into the police. So in 1980, that was me, moved into the police, and I was appointed to N Division
Right.
at Coatbridge, which again was just down the road. So it was ideal. Managed to stay at home,
Yeah.
because the thing then was a lot of single people were getting moved to all sorts of places. And
Of
one of
course,
the guys I was at school with also was in the cadets and joined just before me into the regular force. He got moved away down to Dumbarton. Some get put to Argyll, and some get
Yes.
put to various other places to move away from.
Well, I had the opposite. I joined in 78, but I remember at my interview being asked, would you travel or maybe move away from home? That was a big question. And you were never going to say no.
No.
You know what I mean? I said, yeah, of course. Where would you be thinking of? I thought I was quite worldly at the time, of course. And they said, hey, how about Motherwell? As if it was the end of the world. And it is. And I thought, Fir Park, I've been to Fir Park. It's a blue train, you know, there's no problem there. I ended up in Campbelltown in Argyll, of course. So it was a trick question. Well, the end of the world, I found out later on, was down round about Bonko, round about
Oh,
there.
yeah, that's it.
When I had to go and pick up my DI in the night shift, Pat Durkin.
Pat Durkin, yes.
And I thought I was going to fall off the edge of the
Yeah,
world.
if you turn left just after Bonko,
You
you're
do.
more or less there, just past shots.
Oh dear. So your career in the police then, George, that was 1980?
1980, yeah.
So retired, did you retire round about Police Scotland time?
Retired before Police Scotland came into being.
Right.
I retired in 2010.
Where were you then?
I was working between the Scottish Police College and ACPOS, the Association of Chief Police Officers.
Right.
I was in charge of a national project at that time, so that took me nicely into retirement.
Excellent. It seems to work that way
Yes,
sometimes, doesn't it?
sometimes.
And now?
And now, well, when I retired, I set up my own business doing training to local authorities, people that investigate, similar to the police.
Yes.
I found that there was a gap there. They didn't have much training to actually investigate and how to interview, gather evidence, etc. So I've actually trained most of the local authorities and Scottish Government agencies, and also have spent a while in the United Arab Emirates training the police there, and also out in Qatar.
Excellent. Still working away?
Still working away. We've got a
Yep.
course coming up at the beginning of November up in Larbert in Falkirk with trading standards.
Excellent. And there's something else you can say now whenever anyone like me asks you these daft questions. You can say, and I'm an author.
And I'm an author, yes.
As of the 17th of November.
17th of November.
All right?
Yep.
So see this training that you're doing all over the world, is this what you're using?
Yeah, well, actually, believe it or not, some of the stuff, yes,
It
and
never
it's still in
changes,
there, it
does
never
it?
changes at all.
What is that, George? The police
Um,
manual. It says police manual on the front.
It's a police manual, that's
If
a
anybody can remember it, you're in real trouble.
I'd be very surprised. Some people might recognise it, but I doubt if they remember it. That's the very first police instruction manual.
Right.
It was issued, this is another edition of it, but it was first issued in the late 1800s when the Chief Constable Club, as it was called then, got together and realised that they needed to educate a lot of the
Chief
police officers.
Constable's Club.
Chief Constable's Club, yes, that's what it was called. That's it.
At least they know not to name it that then.
No. But that was the Chief Constable's Club up until almost, I think it was about 1950.
Can I ask you, has Scottish and English police always had a distinct separation between them?
Yeah, down to the legislation. The legal systems are totally different.
Yeah.
So that is the distinction. The basic job they do is the same, but the actual rules and regulations and legislations are at odds with each other, basically, between England and Wales. But
And the whole prosecution system's
the whole
different.
prosecution system. But this was brought in to educate police officers and give them a better understanding of what their powers were, their duties were, and what legislation was available to them to use whilst they're out doing their job.
See, if I did that, I might have passed my tickets a bit quicker. Although the writing's tiny.
Yeah, you'd need a good pair of spectacles to look at that.
So that's 1905, you said?
1910.
1910.
Yeah.
And you said some of the stuff, we're talking 112 years later.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff in there would be recognisable in our
Recognisable to
legislation
be
now.
things like
and in our
theft,
training manuals.
things like theft, housebreaking, some even road traffic stuff. The early road traffic is still the same, but lighting of vehicles, all the rest of it. It's all still there and it's all still relevant.
I've done quite a bit with security over the years, and I'm always fascinated whenever you go into an environment, anywhere in the world, certainly the English-speaking world, and the systems that are in place pretty much go back to those kind of lessons that were learned hundreds of years ago, don't they?
Very much so.
The patrols and the recording of patrols, the occurrence reports, all that kind of stuff.
And that's what the book tells you. That's it. It's basically an A to Z of policing.
So the basics are the basics.
Basics are the basics, never change.
Yeah. Regardless of what we do with shifts and boundaries and legislation, even the human nature is human nature.
Human nature's the same, and the basics of the job, as you said, are still the same. Police officers now are still doing the same as we done when we were in the police,
Yes.
and our predecessors.
Yeah, and always will.
And always will.
That's brilliant. So, the book came. So in 2013, you started the Historical Society,
Yes.
or a group of you did,
Yep.
with all the memorabilia. Where does that stand now? Have you got premises or?
Well, we do have, this is where it becomes a bit funny, we've got premises in Cumnock, which isn't exactly Lanarkshire, it's Ayrshire.
Okay.
But that came about because one of our members who stays down in Ayrshire is friendly with a gentleman who owns a bit of property down in that area, Jim Smith, and he's a local businessman from down there, and also he worked within the fire service
Right.
locally. So
So you knew all the cops.
he knew all the cops, very much so, very, very close working
Yeah.
relationship with the cops down there. He established the Cumnock Heritage Centre, which is a large kind of warehouse facility.
Okay.
He's an avid collector of fire engines.
It must be large
It
then.
is large, that's how large it is, and not all of them are in this facility.
Okay.
He has over 30 fire engines and other vehicles, which are all on display there. And through his friendship with Jim Manson, our member who stays down in Ayrshire, he offered us space to show some of the memorabilia that we've collected over the last 9 years.
Right.
So we now have a permanent facility there that it doesn't concentrate on Lanarkshire. There are Lanarkshire items there, but
Right.
we try and open it up to be a more, how would we say, generic sort of
For
museum. So
police.
there's a lot of different things. And what's really good about that is ex-officers and retired officers from Ayrshire
Yes.
are now becoming quite regular visitors, and they're starting to donate things, which then will hopefully make that actual museum more an Ayrshire focused
Okay.
historical museum, which is, so it's worked well.
Right.
But what we're still trying to do is get premises in Lanarkshire to have a permanent display somewhere.
Okay. So it's fascinating stuff, but along with all that come the stories.
Yes.
So there must be documentation, there must be old case files, court files. Do you come across all that? Is that where the book comes from?
No, the book comes from another angle. As we all know, the last few years COVID has kind of taken over life. Now, I'm not, probably like yourself, not a technical sort of person. I'm not
Oh, you
into...
should say that.
I was just watching you set up earlier, that's all. I was never on Facebook, never
Okay.
on Twitter or anything like that. I didn't have any profile on there. And when the pandemic hit, I'd gathered quite a bit of material from my
You
research.
would have thought the Historical Society would have been on there. That's a great way of reaching ex-cops.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll come to that. But
Okay.
at the time, no, we didn't think about it. We
Okay.
have a website. I mean, we do have a
Right.
website that we put items on and stories
What's
and
that called? What's
photographs.
the
Lanarkshire
domain?
Police Historical Society website.
.com?
So, .org.uk. So
Okay.
www.lphs.org.uk.
Okay.
That's the
Okay,
website. Yeah. So when the pandemic hit, I had all this material, and my wife actually suggested, why don't you start a Facebook page and start putting your stories on? I was a bit reticent because I say I'm not keen on that.
What's the wife's name?
Catherine.
Catherine.
So I'm not keen on that format. However, I decided to bite the bullet, started putting on some stories, some historical
She dragged you
things.
into the 21st
Dragged me
century.
into the 21st century, and lo and behold, it took off
Yes. Yes.
unbelievably, which was a...
Because it's just a quick way of networking.
It's fantastic.
It's a great tool on one hand.
I'm sorry I didn't do it earlier, but
Yeah.
that's one of
Yeah.
these things. So we did do it, but now from that standing start, we're sitting with, I think, it's 835 members on that
Paid
Facebook
up
page.
members.
Yeah, on the Facebook page.
Brilliant.
So it's absolutely fantastic, and what we do is try and do something every day, put something on,
Yes.
whether it just be a photograph or a story, or perhaps police officers that have died on duty or in
Of course.
service
Yeah.
on their anniversary, we will
Remembrance,
remember them on that.
Yeah. It's a great tool for families as well.
Yeah, very much so. And
Yeah.
we've had feedback from families that get great comfort from reading the comments,
Yes.
you know, of the members, you know, which is absolutely fantastic. Because it also allows these families to realise that their sacrifice or their loss is not forgotten,
Ah.
and there is a
And they're
support
part of
network,
something
they're part of
important.
something.
International, is that Facebook? You get
Yeah,
members from all
we've got
across
members
the
in
globe.
Australia, Canada,
Yeah.
America.
Because it's whenever I go abroad, that's when you become more Scottish, I think, when
Yeah.
you're abroad. But as soon as the police comes up, it opens up a whole, whether it's America,
Yeah.
they all love Scotland and the heritage of Scotland. And they've mostly all got some heritage here.
Yeah, well, the fascinating stuff, the thing about that is, in some of the stories that you actually research, you find out that maybe there was a big, how would you say, a lot of people emigrated in the early 1900s, and a lot of
Yes.
these people were police officers. And when you're reading some of these stories and you're looking at names, I've now been in contact with several police forces, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, about officers that migrated over
Yes.
there. And in fact, one that was murdered on duty from the Airdrie area in 1913, I think it was. I managed to get the full story about him and managed to get it published on our Facebook page. In fact, I think that's maybe in the book as well, that one.
Right.
So really fascinating when you find out what these people actually achieved. And a lot of them actually achieved really high
Yes.
positions
Yes.
in a lot of the police forces they went to.
Whenever I travel abroad, especially in English-speaking countries, Malaysia and all over, there's always monuments to Scotsmen from a couple of hundred years ago, because we did really travel the world and change things. Engineering, business enterprise, education. It's unbelievable. In the middle of Delhi, there's a square and it's a Scotsman monument.
It's unbelievable.
We
It's
do
actually,
travel well.
It's quite humbling actually when you see what some of these people have achieved in their life.
So you got now you've got the Facebook and you're getting real life people, because that's the tricky part. It's okay when it's an inanimate object, it's just about history, but when you get real stories and real people, descendants and relatives of people, that's a different ballgame altogether.
Totally, it brings it alive again.
Yeah.
Brings things to life, and you're putting faces to these stories, and you're actually looking at their own family backgrounds as well, and where they've all came from.
Yeah.
An amazing thing, especially
A lot of forces in there as well.
A lot of forces. I mean,
Lanarkshire.
Lanarkshire had 5 police forces in it at one point,
right,
up until 1967. So it was Lanarkshire, the county.
What were they then?
constabulary.
Coatbridge.
Lanarkshire was the county one, so you
Right.
had the overall county constabulary that kind of policed the outlying areas.
Okay.
The towns were policed by borough police forces: Airdrie Borough Police, Coatbridge Borough Police, Hamilton Borough Police, and Motherwell and Wishaw Borough
Right.
Police.
Right. Wishaw had its borough police as well.
Along with Motherwell, they
Or
were
Wishy.
joined. Wishy,
As Pat taught me to say.
Yeah, they were actually joined together. The two town councils came together around about 1920,
Right.
and then in 1930 they created their own police force.
Right. So the stories then, you start coming across them and putting some of them on Facebook, is that really?
Yeah, well, you start off by getting an interesting story, a snippet maybe from a newspaper. It might be from, like the book we've got here, which is the big correspondence, accordance book.
The occurrence book, I love it.
That one's for Cambuslang in the 1940s.
I'm not sure the scale of that will be obvious to the camera, but it's some
It's a big bit of a book, and every police office had one of these.
Right.
So everything that happened in that area on a daily basis would be entered, involving the police obviously, would be entered into the book.
Okay.
So in
Who
there,
by? Would that be the
there
duty
would be a
officer?
duty officer or a station constable
On the shift?
on the shift would do that. And the writing had
So
to
we
be nice and
no
legible.
admin department?
No admin department.
Fantastic.
He was the
This
admin
is getting
department.
better all the time.
So in there you're getting snippets of the stories, but
So when did you get that?
that one was donated to
Right.
the Historical Society.
Okay. Where's
So
that from?
Cambuslang.
Right.
It's the late 1940s. Because a lot of these things were getting thrown out in the bin, and some
Of
people
course.
rescued them from the bin.
That's so precious, huh?
Yeah, and now they're appearing. Obviously, people pass away, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
families find these things. And we are a good receptacle for items. Instead of getting thrown out, we can take them and use them in our displays and for our research.
I did an interview with Tom Wood,
Yes.
retired Deputy Chief
Yep.
of Lothian and Borders. You know
I
Tom.
know Tom, yes.
And he's done a wee bit for you, Bruce.
Yes,
He's done a
he's
forward,
done a
I
forward,
think.
yeah.
Fantastic. And Tom was saying that the Ruxton murder book
Yes,
that he's done,
uh-huh.
which is becoming a big thing now, podcasts and all the rest of it, because it's the first modern murder, if you like, because of forensics that came out
Yes,
of it.
massive.
Yeah. But he was saying that the papers for that were passed to him to get destroyed, but it needed somebody to put a signature to destroy it. It had been found in a desk somewhere or a loft. I think it was found in a loft and handed in by a relative and passed upstairs to him to sign it off to get it binned, but he didn't. He stuck it in a drawer. It's good to know that even the gaffers have got these drawers as well.
Yes. Everyone's got one.
Yeah. And years later, he took it out when he was clearing his desk for his next promotion, probably, and it still had the elastic band on it, you know. And when he opened it up, he realised what he had. It was the original case files. with telephone messages and things on it.
Brilliant.
And that's where the book stemmed from. So it's the same as the stuff you're coming across.
Totally.
And what we're doing here is really putting out an advert for that.
Yeah.
Don't throw anything
Don't
away.
throw anything away, and thankfully people did do that. They kept these things,
Yes.
because otherwise, I mean, a whole piece of our history is gone.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
happening just now with Police Scotland as they close offices,
Of course.
and we're trying
Yes.
to convince them to allow us in before the offices get cleared to identify, historical items so that
Yes.
they can be retained.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy task because it's Police Scotland, it covers the whole of the country.
Country.
But we're getting there, and we've recovered, managed to keep quite a number of good stuff, like books like these and other items of equipment and uniform, etc.
So you were posting stories onto Facebook,
Yeah.
and I saw them.
Yes.
Is that it? There's
That's
no jump
basically it.
there.
There's no jump at all.
And I said to you, have you thought about publishing them?
Yeah.
And you hadn't.
No, it never even entered my mind about
Right.
publishing them. The
You
only
must
thing
have
is,
known they were good stories.
yeah, certainly the feedback.
And you wouldn't
from
have written them?
No, I wouldn't have written them. I would have stopped at a very early point. But it was getting good feedback on the Facebook page for them, so I just kept those going. And it was yourself that posed the question.
Yeah.
And even then, I wasn't sure, and it was only when we met, and I met with Sandy,
Yes.
and we had a discussion that it was agreed I would submit the stories
And see where it
initially and
went.
see where it went. And
Yeah.
fortunately, it's ended up in a book,
The Lanarkshire Police
the
Chronicle.
Lanarkshire Police Chronicles. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to go to the very end of the interview here because you must have amassed so much. Is the second one written yet, John?
Certainly got plenty for it because there's tons of stuff there. I mean, the stories that are in the first book are only really a scratching the surface of what is there.
How did you select them? How many stories?
I think there's probably about 30 or 40 stories in there.
Okay, so how do you whittle them down to select them? Is it over a period of time?
Well, we're trying to make it over a period of time and trying to break it down into classifications
Genre.
and types of crime
Right.
and individuals. You know,
Right.
so not only stories about crimes, but we're identifying through the book some key individuals that have done something through their service that's notable, or indeed they've been murdered on duty, which is another main theme of the book as well.
Okay, that's a theme of the book
One of the themes of the book, yeah.
because we've lost a lot of cops and,
Yeah.
and police officers over the years. And your launch, it's no secret then that there's going to be a tribute at the launch.
Yes, yeah, for two officers that were murdered on duty. In 1976, Constable George Taylor was murdered in Carstairs
Yeah.
following the breakout from the state hospital there of Robert Mohan and Thomas McCulloch, who'd already killed a member of staff and another inmate, and then encountered George and his colleague on a dirty country road in a horrible evening, and George was unfortunately basically hacked to death
Yes.
out in the street. And the other officer is Detective Sergeant Ross Hunt, who was murdered in 1983 trying to make an arrest for an attempt murder in Larkhall, when
Yeah.
a family turned on him and his colleagues, and he again was stabbed to death.
So what is it that we're hoping to do in respect to those two incidents?
Well, during my research, I naively thought that these officers would have been formally recognised for their bravery.
You would kind of take that for granted. I would
Well,
take that for granted.
I was the same. And the more I looked into the research on the internet, I couldn't find anything. And then I spoke to both families, and
Right.
I found out that there's been absolutely nothing. The only thing that each officer has is a plaque at Hamilton Police Office at the entrance,
Yep.
paid for by their colleagues,
Right.
that remembers their sacrifice. There is nothing else, nothing, no Chief Constable's commendation, there's no bravery medals, there is nothing.
Is part of the problem that we're Police Scotland now and that decision-making process has been...
No, that could have been done at the time. I mean,
Yeah.
why it wasn't, I don't know.
Not at divisional level?
Not at division. Well, I'll talk about one that, as far as we were aware at that time when I was doing the initial research, we couldn't find anything
Right.
that indicated either officer had been nominated at any form of level, whether that be local level or going up to force level, had been nominated for an award. And that's still the case. We still actually can't find anything within the police records. However, as we were talking there about Tom Wood and the Ruxton material and these other books that have been retained by people over the years, 2 years ago, a chief superintendent, former chief superintendent, died, John Lauder.
Yes.
Now he was in the unfortunate position that he was the divisional commander in Q Division when both of these officers were killed in 76 and 83. Not something
No,
you'd really
no.
want to be associated with, and that was what he was at the time. Now, John died a couple of years ago, and his daughter was clearing out the house ready for sale. And she'd found some items of uniform and memorabilia that she wanted to donate to the society, which she'd done. When I went over to pick the stuff up, she also handed me a big bag of paperwork that she'd found that she was going to throw out. So I said, no, don't do that, because we don't know what's in it for a start. So I took it home, went through it, and I almost fell off the seat at one point, because having went through the big pile of paperwork, I found documents from John Lauder to the Chief Constable at the time, Sir Pat Hamill, recommending George Taylor in 1976 for a posthumous Bravery Award, National Bravery Award, the Queen's Bravery Award. And I also found a letter from Pat Hamill, the Chief Constable, to the then Secretary of State for Scotland, Bruce Milan, endorsing this and putting them forward for a Queen's Bravery Award posthumously. Nothing happened. That was in 1977 that was submitted. We've asked the question, we've posed the question of government ministers. They can't give us an answer as to why that didn't happen. In fact, when we first done this, before we...
Is this UK government?
This is UK, well,
yes,
these awards can only be
yeah.
Awarded by the national...
Because there was no Scotland at that time, as far as devolution.
It was just a Scottish office at that time. So we'd posed the question. We'd actually asked about awards before we found this paperwork, and we get the answer, believe it or not, that they will not look at bravery awards if they're over 5 years old. Which to me is crazy, because people can get knighthoods and other honours and make millions of pounds in the music industry, film industry, and that goes back over many years. But for bravery and losing your life in the service of your community and your country,
there's a 5-year time bar.
There's a 5-year time bar. Crazy. The answer to that is people at the time would have known better when the incidents occurred, and they would be able to have given the answers as to why someone was or was not nominated. I have another issue with that, because both of these cases are within living memory. People are still alive that were involved in these cases. They were well covered in the media, and are still well covered in the media. So it's not as if there is nothing there, or we'd be struggling
with some doubt about it.
And
both cases went to court.
Both cases went to court. They were convicted.
Murder record.
Mona McCulloch pled guilty, so it's quite clear that they admitted their guilt. The other one, they went to trial and were found guilty. And again, it's quite clear that they were obviously guilty of that offence. So we did actually go back and ask the question. Well, we've now found this paperwork, and we've been basically blanked. We have not got an answer as to why, in the George Taylor case, with all this paperwork we now have, that obviously shows he was nominated in 1977, they still have not got an answer as to why nothing was progressed.
Is there other officers in there, George, over the years then?
There are, and just to finish that one off, the ironic thing is 3 police officers from Cumbria who were involved in that case, because when Mona McCulloch escaped, they murdered George, they stole a police van.
And headed south,
stole another van, and then took another car from a farm and headed south in the A74, and were stopped eventually in Cumbria with a trail of Strathclyde, Dumfries and Galloway officers on their tail. And the 3 officers who were part of the Cumbria police officers that stopped them and arrested them were all given the Queen's Brave Conduct Medal, I think it was, or Queen's Medal for Gallantry. But,
which is fine.
Which is fine, I have no issue with that. Because when you read the nature of the actual arrest, it was quite horrific and quite intense. So no issue with that whatsoever. But
the officers...
it just doesn't sit properly.
What's the next stage of it then? We just keep hammering the door?
Well, we keep hammering the door.
We've got a petition?
Yeah, we've got, well, not petitions ongoing, we've got Graham Simpson, MSP. He's taken up the case, and he's actually had a debate in the Scottish Parliament, and that was responded to by Keith Brown, the Justice Minister. And again, I spoke to Keith Brown a couple of weeks ago, and he's very much behind this, and he'll be writing to the UK government to seek answers for this. We're also trying through the press. Norman Sylvester, who works with the Sunday Mail, he's been very, very helpful in getting things.
He's still with the Sunday Mail?
Still there. Yeah, after all these years, he's still there. Not on a full-time basis, but still there. And he's, in fact, even today, he's got an article in the Sunday Mail for George.
You can tell I'm missing at crime scenes.
Yes,
he was always there before us.
For you, So there's it's live, there's lots going on. The Police Federation are involved, Police Scotland as well, to get in their due. Chief Constable is on board.
And we'll have a wee stage at the launch for that as well, to do something in that respect.
We'll certainly be mentioning that at the launch, and that's what the book is. That's what the book is dedicated to. It's dedicated to George Taylor and Ross Hunt.
Fantastic.
And the families are on board. We've got them with us every stage of the way.
It's important.
And
it's very important.
Well, it is important, because I think over the years they've thought perhaps they've been forgotten about.
Yes.
We're trying to say they're not.
And it's probably politics that's got in the way somewhere along the line, but it's important to know that their colleagues haven't forgotten them.
Definitely.
Even the contemporary colleagues.
That's
Because it's something that everybody respects.
And I must say, I don't think it's the politicians, I think it's the civil servants that are the problem.
Okay.
Rather than the politicians.
That's
all
the
seem to be
politician
on
then
board.
you saying that?
Yeah, well, yeah. No, but it's true. I've not had any politician that I've spoken to
It's
say
not sympathetic.
it's not sympathetic in any way. That seems to be the stumbling block.
I just think they can do everything.
Yeah, it seems to be the civil servants look at things in black and white and don't think things can be changed.
Yeah. Yes, and that 5-year time bar's enough just to put it in the outbasket.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting and very worthy. Good luck with that.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed.
Yeah. There's nobody not going to wish you luck with that.
No.
I just noticed a wee warrant card. Is it a Strathclyde warrant card?
Yes.
What's the real one?
It's me.
Oh, it's you. For goodness sake, George. You've hardly changed a bit.
Change a wee bit.
Is that your original one?
No, that's when I was in the CID. That one was a DC.
Where were you?
Coatbridge.
Tell us your career then, George. Let's go back to you. Started off at
Coatbridge.
Coatbridge.
Yep, and worked uniform in Coatbridge, Airdrie, Chapel Hall in a village kind of station, and then back into Airdrie. And in 1991, I was appointed to the CID.
Okay. Still there? Still in the
Still in the N division, yeah.
Right.
Still, I was in Airdrie and then Cumbernauld and then down to Coatbridge again. So
Right.
I went full circle. I was a late developer in relation to getting my promotion examinations.
Okay.
I got my first, what we call the sergeant's exam,
Ah.
in around about 1989.
Did you pass by miles?
Sorry?
Did you pass by miles?
Well, I don't know. They didn't. Well, I can't actually remember. I passed it anyway. That's the main thing.
Okay.
So I had that one ticket, as we called it at the time. But to get promotion, you needed both the inspector's exams as well. So I got into the CID with my sergeant's exam, and then, as you do, you look around about you and you see people getting promoted and scratch your head thinking,
did you another ticket?
So I went and got my other examinations, and that was me. And then it's quite funny. I was looking for opportunities to maybe expand what I'd done, because I spent all that time in the 1 division.
Of course.
Uniform and CID, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It's an absolutely great place to work. And a vacancy came up for a short-term secondment at Oxford Street in the training department, training probationers and tutor corps at the time.
Yep.
So I thought, I'll go for that. I've now got my tickets, it gives me something else, another string to your bow, another wee bit.
Yep.
And I'd never done anything like that, so it was obviously a challenge. And it was quite funny because I put the application in, which was then passed through to the local superintendent, who was a uniform
It
superintendent.
was also a way towards promotion, wasn't it? Because I think you got your stripes when you went into training. Am I getting
No, we'll get to that in a wee second. That came later, but it was the superintendent was actually an ex-detective as well.
Who's that?
It was Peter Dunn.
Oh yes,
And he'd just been promoted into that from DCI, I think at Motherwell, to uniform superintendent at Coatbridge, which is obviously the big promotion because he was coming up for retirement. So it was a big jump in his retirement pay and pension and all the rest of it. So he called me in and he throws down my application and asked me, what are you? Are you a Woody or a detective? Woody meaning uniform constable. I says, all I'm trying to do is advance myself and try to give myself something else that I can put on my CV. I says, with all due respect, sir, I'm not the one standing here in uniform. And he just then grabbed the application, signed it, and away I went. I went for an interview, obviously, it wasn't just handed to you, so I went down an interview, and I was the only one from a CID background that went for the secondments, and I was successful, and it was great.
So 3 years you do?
No, it was only a short 6 months secondment at that time.
Perfect.
So I'd done that, and it was brilliant, but from there, because it actually went very well, and they'd done an assessment at the end of it, and the assessment was really good. And about 8 months later, they started up a national training programme to do a formal investigative interview training programme, which was for interviewing witnesses and suspects on tape and in-depth, a bit more in-depth than we had.
The tapes out by then?
Tapes were out by then, but what they were finding was interviews weren't particularly brilliant. So they wanted to...
Can you stop bursting out laughing there?
So they wanted to make that
some
kind of more
initial
professional.
interviews.
Some were pretty poor. So
cringe,
I was selected as one of a group of people to go to the Tullyallen to do a trainers course to come back and roll out with
and standardise it.
To standardise, and it was a 3-week course, intense with psychologists and all the rest of it. And came back and then wrote the training programme for Strathclyde and started to roll that out.
Yeah.
And then I got an acting rank in uniform back at Coatbridge for 6 months, and then I went to the Spotlight unit. After I finished my secondment, which was the big thing at the time. It was the big
Flavour of the month.
project at the time with Alan Burnett in charge. And from there I got promoted to uniform sergeant. So it was after 18 years
Wow.
in the job I got promoted to sergeant at Maryhill
Quite an
uniform sergeant.
apprenticeship.
Yeah, quite an apprenticeship.
You
Took
moved
us-
to
I went to
City as
Maryhill,
well.
went to the city as well. So went to Maryhill and spent a year there on the shift, and then got my detective sergeant at Partick.
Is that where you met Bob Barrowman?
That's where I met Bob Barrowman, yes. Legend.
Because we're talking about museums and stuff.
Yes.
Aye. Okay. So from Maryhill, we might as well finish it off.
Maryhill went to detective sergeant at Partick.
Marine.
Yep, which was brilliant, absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably one of the
Yeah.
best places I've ever worked. And the people that were there, I must admit, a brilliant team. David McFall, Ross Urquhart, Scott Ferguson, etc.
Yeah.
Brilliant team. And
It's a great office.
Oh,
yeah.
I think what I liked
It was
was
a bit like Govan. It was a bit like Govan.
no, it was non-stop.
Yeah.
But what I loved about there was you had the popular Byers Road end with all the
Yeah, the West
really,
End,
really
yes,
good West
yes.
Endies, and then you went down to White Inch and various other places, which was
Yeah.
opposite end of the scale, but it was brilliant, and the crossover was superb. I was only there.
And you're right next to the city as well. You
Yeah, I
city
mean,
stuff too.
well, at that time, the divisions had merged because Partick had been B division, the Marine division,
Right.
and it merged with A division, which was the city centre division.
Oh, right.
So all of that became A division.
I think it was
Basically,
that.
I basically right down to Dumbarton, you were
Right,
covering the
yeah.
boundary. So I was there for, I think it was 2 and a bit years, and I got acting uniform inspector in
Okay.
Stewart Street, which I'd done for
Right.
nigh on a year, and then back onto the CID book at Partick, and then promoted DI to Serious Crime Squad
Okay.
here at
What
Govan.
year would that be?
That was 2003.
Oh, the squad weren't governed by then.
Yeah, they were
Right.
going at that point. And it shows you how much the Chief Constable knew at that point. Mr. Ray, when I got promoted, said, "That's brilliant, congratulations, so you'll be getting a parking space at Pitt Street."
He didn't know it.
He didn't know it moved to
Nobody
Gilly
cared
either,
what
so,
to do.
so went down there, and that was again brilliant because you were then operating on a force
Yes,
level and
yes.
dealing with all the major stuff, terrorism,
Yep.
and some of the really high profile stuff, which was absolutely brilliant. And then I done my acting DCI at the Serious Crime Squad for 6 months as well.
Okay.
And then just towards the end, we were involved actually with a case from here in Govan when an Asian gentleman was abducted at gunpoint and taken away down to Manchester.
Yep.
So we ended up down in Manchester, and I was responsible for all the arrest procedures. And as you mentioned earlier on about English and
Yes.
Scottish differences in legislation and processes, I had to develop an arrest procedure to get these people when we arrested
Okay.
them back to Scotland, which was quite involved and complicated.
Yeah.
So we done that successfully and got them back and convicted. And then after that, in 2006, I applied for a job at the police college, a staff officer's job, and again a promoted job, and I got it. So,
Excellent.
which I thought was going to take me up to my
Your retirement.
retirement.
Mhm.
I would have to have got a 6 months extension to it, which was going to happen. But a year and a half before I was due to retire, this other national programme came along, and it was criminal disclosure.
Right.
It was basically
Yes.
where the police have to provide to the Procurator Fiscal Service for disclosure purposes in criminal cases
Yeah.
all of the relevant evidence in a case. So we had to do
Yeah.
a lot of work with
All
Yeah,
of
that,
that's
everything,
that's
which was a
the
bit of
key
a
word,
change.
isn't
It was a
Yeah.
bit of a key change for
Yeah.
everyone. So to develop that in conjunction with the Crown Office, and then develop a training programme on a national basis, which we done for a year and a half. And again, that was a promoted post, so I was superintendent in charge of that, and that's where I retired from.
Brilliant.
So everything happened in the
Full
last
circle.
12 years.
Yeah. Very intense.
It was quite intense.
It's interesting that all the disclosure. We've got a word for it in America that keeps flipping through my head. And
I know
really,
what you mean.
aye. But where the defence prosecution have to disclose, it's basically the same thing. But I was listening to a thing in the radio during the week, the Boy in the Woods murder from 25
Yeah.
years ago now, and there was forensic evidence available in
Mhm.
that case that was never made public
Yeah.
because the police honed in on who they thought the mother.
Yeah.
And I've seen that a few times during my career, and with hindsight, but everything's great with hindsight.
Oh,
isn't it?
hindsight, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
But now everything's under the microscope so much.
Yes.
That is not only just forensically, but everything.
Everything.
Yeah. And anything at all. That's the problem. We can't have a gap there.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be accounted for. Or if there are gaps, you need to account for the gap and
Mm.
show what you've done to try and close that gap.
So do you think CID officers don't have that desk drawer anymore then?
No, they're not allowed to address that. That was the problem. That's why we got the disclosure legislation because of
All the stuff in the drawer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else have we got here?
Um,
Is this there was a detective training book, is this?
Yeah, no, this is it here.
Yeah,
This is it from 1957, I think it is.
because I'm still studying this one.
Yep. It's a really interesting book because it's a City of Glasgow detective training book, but what the City of Glasgow done at the Ulster Street training facility was brought in the county and borough forces as well and trained them, the ones that surrounded Glasgow, and they were also involved in that training, which then standardised the whole process of that criminal investigation throughout that particular area.
And do you think there was a difference between the cities and the county areas at that time as well?
Oh, a massive difference, I think
different ways of policing.
Different ways of policing. I think the city police officers thought they were probably more experienced and in a better position. Which, I suppose in a way they were probably better resourced than the county and the borough forces because they didn't have the same resources to actually conduct their investigations.
Mm-hmm. But I'd come from one or the other. I'd come from being a DO in Argyll to the crime squad, serious, and then into division at Govan. But the grounding that you get in the county was always, because you dealt with everything. Sheep shearing and sheep dipping and you name it.
You name it. I think what you said earlier.
Road accidents, fatal road accidents, you name it. Whereas in Glasgow you've got a department that will come and take.
That's what I was going to say. You mentioned admin departments earlier, and that was a Glasgow thing, where the counties had them to a certain extent, but generally as a uniformed officer in CID, you dealt with everything from beginning to end.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of times in Glasgow it was handed over to various different other people.
And quite often we would have a sudden death and you had to stay on and come up to do the post-mortem. Not do the post-mortem, but be present for identification purposes. So you ended up working right through. Whereas in Glasgow or City that would never happen. You'd be away for the locus in 10 minutes.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Great to have both sides of the fence.
Oh yeah.
So in the book, what period do we cover in the Chronicles then?
Well, we cover quite an extensive period because we cover probably between about 1870 right up until the 1980s.
Okay.
So it's quite an extensive kind of coverage.
Okay. It's about Scottish football's time period.
Just think about it.
So 150 years.
About 150 years.
And it's not just crime, there's local stories and
there's local stories,
characters.
Individuals, people that have gone elsewhere in the world and achieved great things. It's about local crimes, from basic crimes through to the more serious murders and all the rest of it. So it's a good mixture of a variety of different stories.
Did you write the story?
Yeah.
You collate all the information about the story, the characters, the background, the history, and then you write it and sift it down that way?
Yeah, basically there's only one in the book that I didn't do that with. That was one of my former colleagues, Joe Craig, who's also involved in the historical side of things. He'd dug into the murder of a sub-inspector in Bishopbriggs way back in the 1890s.
Okay.
Murdered by a chap, and he'd written
a
big article on that.
Inspector? Right.
Well, it was a kind of rank between sergeant and inspector at that time. Sub-inspector it was called. So he'd done a lot of research on that, and he had actually compiled it all. So he's acknowledged in the book for
just reproduced
I'll just reproduce that particular story because it is really interesting, and there was nothing else you can add to that because Joe had been totally thorough in his preparation of it.
And you don't want to tamper with it?
No, totally not.
Yeah. Is there a beginning and an end then? Do you have a theme through the whole? I've seen some of the stuff that Ringwood have come up with in the advertising that's not really been put out yet. It'll be starting to get put out this week probably, because we launch on November the 17th.
Yes, that's right. At Drumpelia Golf Club.
Drumpelia. Why Drumpelia?
Well, I'm a member there. My father was an avid golfer. He was a really, really good golfer. And he died kind of suddenly in 2003. And he was the president of the golf club at the time as well. So there's lots of family links to the golf club.
Everything's historical.
It's historical,
yeah. So that's on the 17th. Beginning and end of the book?
There isn't really a beginning and end because it's wanted to be one of those books that you could pick up, put down, and not having to follow a story. You know, so you can sit and read the book for 10 minutes, half an hour, put it down, and you'll come back to a fresh story.
Yeah.
You know, so there's some interesting things there.
And it's going well just now.
Seems to
I
be,
should say that I'm not sure that you're 100% conversant with this because we've just decided all the prices have shot up in the last couple of months, and we've had some real soul searching, but we've had to put the price of the book up.
Yeah.
All the books that we produce now have gone up to $12.99 from $9.99.
Yeah.
But until the launch date, you can get it for $9.99 because that's what it was originally.
So I'm trying to tell people that as well.
If you want to start putting, we've got a launch this week Thursday night, we've got a book launch, The Carnelian Tree, with Anne Pettigrew. And after that, we'll be focusing totally on the Chronicles. And it's going really well so far.
Yeah, it seems to be quite a lot of interest.
Yeah. And I think the word of mouth of that will only spread.
Yeah. Also get good coverage from, we're in the Daily Record and the local papers in Lanarkshire have covered the book as well, which is quite good. So we're getting people that are not within that police family as well.
Okay.
You know, and I've also been into the local libraries south and North Lanarkshire and given out some information in the book. So.
And we've got a few politicians coming along as well.
Politicians coming along. Graham Simpson's coming.
Who are involved in trying to get the Bravery Award situation sorted as well.
Yeah, we've got Sandra Brown as well, who set up the Moira Anderson Foundation.
Right.
She wrote the book Where There Is Evil about the murder of or suspected murder. Moira Anderson. So she's coming along and she's agreed to say a few words as well at the event, which is good.
So it's going to be good. Yeah. What's the capacity at Drumpeller, do you know?
In the big hall, probably about 150 or so.
Oh, well, we should be all right.
Plenty of people.
We should be chanting at the door, actually.
Oh, should
think about it.
Aye.
A few shillings. Anything else you want to point out? I see the old Lanarkshire crest in. One of them, anyway.
One of them,
that's the one that's on the book, George, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one on the book. That was brought into being in 1907. And that's a solid silver badge.
What does it say?
Vigilantia.
Right.
So,
solid silver?
Solid silver, that one. They later became just white metal, as the badges are now, but it's a pretty unique badge.
I don't know where that one's going. Why is it unique?
It's unique because it doesn't have a crown on it. If you notice, a lot of the other badges have got a couple
that's the basis of them.
all have crowns on them.
Yeah.
Whereas that didn't. The original badge that Lanarkshire had did have a crown, but they moved to that double-headed eagle or double-headed griffin, as some people call it, which is the Lanark coat of arms design. So they adopted that.
Lanark itself?
Lanark itself, right. Yep. So they adopted that in 1907.
What's all this? What's the...
Well, these are the badges of the various forces. That's Hamilton Borough.
The top
police
one?
Badges, all of them, all relate to Hamilton Borough Police.
Right.
So
over the years
from the 1800s right through to the 1960s when they disappeared.
All the hat badges.
Yep.
What's that? That's like the Strathclyde one, isn't it?
That is the same as the current badge, only up until 1975 it was a solid filled badge. The new badge is what they call fretted, whereas the Thistle area is all cut out now to make it a more distinct.
Has it got Semper Vigilo on it?
Semper Vigilo's on it. That badge was designed in 1928.
My arms aren't long enough anymore for me to see it.
Yeah, it's got Semper Vigilo. It's exactly the same badge, only it's a solid badge. The badge was designed by a school teacher from Dumfries in 1928.
You're full of facts. And this?
That was my first we call shoulder numbers, epaulettes, N64 at Coatbridge.
What's your Reggie number?
260683.
That was 25066.
Never forget these things.
No.
In fact, it's generally used for other purposes as well. But the other badges we've got that one, we've got Motherwell and Wishaw.
Okay.
Borough Police. Now that small badge there, that one there, that's quite unique. Motherwell were supposed to have their own police force in 1914.
Right.
The council had agreed to establish a force. At that time it was policed by Lanarkshire Constabulary.
Start of the First World War.
Yeah, start of the First World War. They'd chosen the Chief Constable, the badges, uniforms, a lot, and then an Act of Parliament came in to say you can't do it.
Right.
So it never happened.
Why was that?
Because of the war.
Right.
They were not allowing any changes.
Any change.
So that badge is unique. It was never actually worn. So
Right.
as we call it, that's the force that never was.
Right.
So if you see anything that just has Motherwell Borough on it,
Right.
it's worth a wee bit of money.
And I was nearly posted to Motherwell as well.
Well, yeah, that
How
could
lucky
have
was
been
I?
this one's Coatbridge Borough. It's a belt buckle and a cap badge at the top.
Right.
Again, quite unique. But everybody started wearing these ones, the national cap badge, from about the 1950s. So. And Airdrie Borough,
It's never ending.
which is again a variation on the Lanark one as well. I'll show you this in a minute. It's got the double-headed griffin eagle on it as well.
Right. Okay.
And in the early 1900s, they just changed to having a crown on their cap badge.
Right.
And then numbers, etc. So as you'll see, that's got the Lanark coat of arms on it.
Right. Again, yes.
Yeah, and Airdrie's motto is Vigilantibus, which again, vigilante, always
It's all
vigilant.
plays on a
Yeah,
word.
plays on a word. As you say, we've got the
Stick.
stick, good quality, and
See the weight of it?
it's been, and that's what was issued to Lanarkshire Constabulary officers, and the 50s and 60s, which is actually a pencil with Lanarkshire Constabulary on it, a propelling pencil.
For the notebook.
For the notebooks.
Cut out a notebook.
Notebooks. I've got a notebook as
But
well.
you did your notebook and pencil in those days as well.
Yep. And the old favourite that we were all issued with when we joined was the whistle.
Lanarkshire.
And that's a Lanarkshire County Constabulary whistle.
So all the forces would have their own whistle. It's heavy, isn't it?
That's quite heavy. Yeah. It's similar to the one that you and I would have given the Acme Thunderer. So it'd be the same sort of, same sort of
not quite as, it's a bit better quality this.
that's a lot better. And then with the notebooks that we had.
Yeah.
And the elastic bands are for court purposes.
Is that, of course, is that a cover that's on it?
Yeah, that's my own cover.
Right.
So, and inside are all the wee bits and pieces.
Your cuff key.
You had memoirs and cuff keys, yeah. So
the obligatory elastic band.
Obligatory elastic band.
It's got the lawyer looking at a different page.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So there's lots more of this stuff as well.
We're quite fortunate. We work closely with the local Lanarkshire Police Division, and they've given us storage for our stuff at Blantyre Police Office.
Excellent.
So we've got a whole, and believe it or not,
They're throwing the cops out. Is Blantyre still open?
It's not open.
Day shift?
No, it does have a front counter, but it's only open at certain times.
Right.
Civilian member of staff that are support officers.
I wonder about all these offices where there's just a front desk now and it's only open 9 till 5. What's happening with all that space that's in behind?
Well, there's a lot of things happening with it.
You're taking over.
In Blantyre, we are. Because believe it or not, we actually have, when Pitt Street closed down, the old Strathclyde Police headquarters, which is now going to be luxury flats. We have now actually got, believe it or not, the glass front doors of Pitt Street. We have the large glass doors for the Chief Constable's corridor in storage at Blantyre Police Office.
Right.
All engraved, they're all engraved with the crest and everything. These were going in the skirt.
Could have taken a picture of it. There's Bobby Denny standing there still.
Aye, well, I'm sure he opened the door quite a few times.
Something that I was going to mention to you, George, here at Pollock with the walking football, which is what we do here, and we do all sorts of football here, but I do the walking football.
Yep.
Every Monday we have a sporting memories session. And we find that talking about sport and football, and it always comes back to football, is very, very therapeutic for people of a certain age or certain demographic who are maybe lonely, isolated, whatever, people with dementia and different things. We've now got people from homes being brought to the Monday session to talk about sport. Do you find that talking about history is brings people to life like that as well? Yeah,
it does, especially when you show photographs and things. That seems to trigger, something really in people's minds. It takes them back, and it's amazing. You'll probably find that yourself from doing these sort of things.
That's photographs. Memories, that's all photographs.
Photographs, yeah.
Yep.
The memories it brings back for people that can't remember. Recent
what they had for breakfast.
Yes. My goodness. It's incredible.
So it's photographs of footballers.
Bobby Lennox, is that?
There's Bobby, and so on and so forth, with the details in the back. So if you put half a dozen of them out, that'll get conversation going for an hour over a coffee and a tea. Brilliant. And the relatives of people that come along, because they come as well, and either sit in or sit out here or go for a coffee or whatever. They say it's amazing how it brings people back for a few hours. Music does it as well, of course. Yeah. But what you're doing here is very powerful in that respect too. Yeah, I mean, we do quite a lot of open days. The recent one we done was in Rutherglen Library. There's a bygone sort of theme to it. And there's a lot of people. I was actually surprised just how many people come in. And it was like that. You see people, the other stalls that were there as well were all about various other history items, and people seeing things, taking them back to where they were, miners' lamps or bottles, whatever it might be, a milk bottle. Immediately you're back there, hearing the clink of the milkman delivering the bottles. I was at the Transport Museum with my grandson, and I did it when I saw the platform shoes. We need to dig them out a lot. But it's amazing, and it's great that you can do these sort of things, and it brings people back to life. It's just made me think about uniform as well. I take it you've got loads of old bits of uniform. I've got uniform going back to the old high collar uniforms of the early. They were smart, weren't they? Aye. Right through to wearing the capes. Scottish Police did wear helmets as well at one point. Now I think about it, all these uniforms were smart. They were. It's the modern one that does my head in, with a baseball cap. It's not really a uniform when you see it, because if you look at two cops walking down the street and you look at them closely,
the two of them won't be wearing the same stuff. One's wearing a baseball cap,
Yeah.
one's wearing a peak cap.
Yeah.
It's not uniform, but
I don't know if I'll keep this in the video, but I was passing Hampden one day. There must have been something on, whether it was a concert of football, I can't remember. But the cops were congregating in the Asda car park. But as I was driving past, I said to Fiona, there's the security guys getting ready, because I thought it was Group 4 or whoever getting ready to go over.
I think that's the problem, is that so many people are wearing that style of uniform or equipment that it's very difficult sometimes. And you'll remember this, we were always told as uniformed police officers, always wear your hat.
Yes.
It's what stands out in the crowd. It's what stands out in the crowd. And it's true, if you're in a crowd of people, generally with the height of police officers, you can see that hat, the diced band stands out.
And that's why Soweto brought it in.
Yes.
To differentiate cops from other council workers. Yes. And it's a recognised symbol of emergency services, never mind the police. So I hate seeing cops with no hands in pockets and all that. And I'm not that old, you know what I mean? There must be older cops, much older than me, who would have slapped you for something like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, you'd have been left with no uncertain terms.
Hands in pockets, slovenly, and blethering, going on the street, blethering each other.
You'll remember this as well, and this is part of the book too, is when I joined, there were still people in the job that had been set in the World War, World War, and the stories they could tell you, you know, and the experiences they'd been through were absolutely phenomenal. And there was that strict discipline attached to it, which I think is what you need. That's a uniformed and disciplined service. So there needs to be that sort of rigidity to it. A lot of things had to change, of course, but the essentials of the job, I think, with the discipline side of things, should still remain.
And I actually don't know much about what's going on with discipline now, but the big thing for me is the appearance of the police. Is that you're looking for respect from the public, and that starts off with how they perceive you. Well, it's the same way. You've got the beard now as well, but in that, you'll be the same. We weren't allowed. You had to get permission.
I've only developed this recently. I've never had a beard before, but certainly if I was still in the job, there's no way I would be. Tattoos, need to wear long sleeves of good tattoos.
And going into short sleeve order, was it a forced thing?
You weren't allowed. It was
like did the same thing at the same time.
Like during the summer, I mean, again, the senior person on the shift basically directed the mode of place. If one was going out with a tunic on, you all went out with a tunic. If one was taking the tunic off, you all took the tunic off, so everybody was the same. Which
that's a kind of basic principle.
Totally.
It's probably in there somewhere.
I'll be in one of these books somewhere along the line. I'll be in that one, in the manual.
But no doubt it'll go full circle again.
I think so. Well, I think it's so. Police Scotland have now said that beards are not going to be allowed.
Right.
Yes, unless there's a medical issue.
Yes.
And a lot of English forces are now rolling it back to a more formal dress code. In fact, a lot of them are getting rid of baseball caps and going back to helmets and caps because they see it as being that identifiable object of the uniform, and which I think is a good thing.
I seem to remember that you couldn't stop a car without your hat on. Part of the legislation in the old Road Traffic Act.
Had to be in uniform.
A few road traffic acts since then, of course. But you had to be in uniform, and being in uniform meant the hat as well.
Thing. Totally.
Because CID officers would say, "Get me a uniform here to
deal
with us, to stop cars."
We couldn't do it.
Meant to be. Brilliant. George, we could go on all day.
Yes,
and I can't wait till the next book, so we can do it all over again.
We'll see how this one goes.
Yes. And we're at Drumpelia on the 27th.
Not 17th.
17th. See, that was a wee test. To see if anybody's listened all the way through to the very end. The Lanarkshire Police Chronicles. Can't wait, George. Brilliant. Thank you.